Welcome to Aspects of Writing with your host, James Kelly. Now, let's get writing. Here's your host, James Kelly.
Hello and welcome to Aspects of Writing. I'm your host, James Kelly, and my guests for today's show are Tara Virnick and Sherry West. And we're going to be talking about how important is a seminar or an event and really what motivates us. And I'm going to start off with a few quotes. We used to do this, and we're going to go back to this, I think. We're going to start with Sherry. Sherry, what's your quote for today?
Hi, James. My quote for today is, "True authority and true leadership come from knowing who you are and not pretending to be anything else," by Robert Iger.
I like that one. And for you, Tara?
Hi, James. Thanks for having me today.
You're welcome.
My quote's from Nelson Mandela, and it states, "As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same."
I like that, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great quote.
And my quote is from Mandy Hale, and hers is, 10 years from now, make sure you can say that you chose your life and you didn't settle for it.
Ooh, that's good.
So we're going to be starting off with, basically, why don't you, Sherry, give us a brief description of your background?
Hi, James, again. Okay, so my background originated in the fashion industry as a fashion designer, and through the years of my career, I have morphed into a brand strategist and marketing expert. I work with clients and brands and companies on business planning and growing to be a brand, and also product development.
All right. And Tara?
Thank you, James. I started out in the insurance industry out of college, and during that time, I earned a law degree. I became an elite life coach, and I'm still in the insurance industry as a leader and looking to branch out into more personal development space.
All right. Now, the reason they're on the show today, both are here. I've known Sherry for several months now. I met Tara actually yesterday, or was it the day before yesterday?
The day before yesterday. Yes, 2 days ago.
The days merged
together.
Yeah. So the reason we're talking about is that Sherry, when I first met her, had no idea she was going to be writing a book. And now she has a concept for 6, I believe.
That is correct.
All right. And Tara has always wanted to write a book, but wasn't certain how to go about it or if she would ever do it.
Correct.
And Sherry, why don't you tell us about that experience for you, because we started talking about this first.
Well, so I was introduced to you, James, last September to do a podcast. And upon coming to Quirky Minds Media Studio, I learned about all the different divisions that you have here at the studio. And one of them was All Aspects Writing. So upon a couple meetings with you, we decided, hey, you can write some books and do your podcast at the same time. So having a podcast was intimidating enough. Then it's like, okay, do you have some book ideas? But you made it seem very simple and easy. And then also you offered a course in it. I didn't take the course at the time until just recently, but just through being put at ease on how to do the podcast, since I already had the content from some of the courses I lectured in and working with clients, I already had the content. So you kind of coached me on how to develop my content for the podcast and at the same time develop the book. And I have been developing them simultaneously. And now, having actually taken your class the other day, now it's all come full circle, and we're already in the process of completing the first book and launching the podcast.
Yeah. So for you, it was more about the podcast, and you do marketing and branding. And we thought, how can you escalate that, I guess, to a different level? And you did that by the idea of having those books, because the books is really what the whole podcast will be around. It'll be centered around those books.
Exactly. So I've taken the concept almost like a master class, since I lecture on those same topics of brand marketing and management and things like that. Just taking that content and disseminating it through the podcast, taking listeners now, not just students or clients, taking them through that process of building their business and taking the angst out of it. Business planning, there's the brand story, there's product development, and then there's the go-to market strategy.
All right. And for Tara, you basically had shared with us that you blog, and that
Correct.
You blog quotes. Why don't you tell us that experience?
I've been in the personal development space for a while, and I wanted to get something out on a platform, but I didn't know what platform. Well, when COVID hit last year, I have a staff of about 70 to 80, and they were really uneasy with everything going on, and I've gained so much knowledge over the years that I wanted to share it, and I realized I know I could help many more people that are working 9-to-5 corporate jobs that aren't exposed to this content. So I was thinking, I would like to write a book, but I don't know if I can write a book. Maybe I'll do a podcast. Sherry actually told me when she'd met you about the opportunities that she was creating, and told me about your course as well. And I took your course yesterday. And what I loved about it was it made me realize I can do this, because you made it very, I don't want to use the word simplistic in the wrong way, but the steps aren't so daunting now. Thinking of writing a book is just such a big deal when you've never done it. So you broke things down step by step, giving checklists, and it made it so much more accessible to actually be able to write a book. So now I know I'm going to write my book and turn that into a podcast as well, just from meeting with you. So I appreciate.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes.
And I think what's important here, and I've shared with you how I was motivated to write my first novel, because it was originally a script, a motion picture script, was the fact that I took courses. And I didn't realize until we were talking that was my motivation to complete that novel, was the fact that I always called myself a creator. Like, I'm a creator, but I'm not a writer. And then when I took this course, the woman who was teaching it made me say, well, if you wrote it, aren't you a writer? And I'd say, no, I'm a creator. And she said, but you wrote it. And I'd say, yes, but she goes, you wrote it, you are a writer. So from that point forward, it was instilled in me, I wrote this, I'm a writer. And I think that's what we have to remember, is when you're writing something down, you are now putting yourself in that realm.
Correct.
You're an author.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with saying that. Even if it isn't published or never gets published, you still are a writer. And I think if you can get to that point of understanding, it's easier for you to continue. And then, like you said, when it comes to finding ways to, that's the importance of having a seminar or an event, is finding that motivation or finding a way that's simple for you to complete that process. I've gone to many seminars, I've gone to many events. Sometimes it's very difficult to understand or discern everything they're saying. And so what I tried to do was incorporate a course that is truly simple.
Yes.
And I literally have a step checklist that if you just do it this first, this next, and you follow that step-by-step process, you can do this without a doubt.
Correct.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead, Sherry.
Oh, and so just to piggyback on what you guys are saying, I do business plan writing and market strategy, so I'm always writing. But I never thought of myself as an author until meeting James, until saying, you know what, you can put this in a book. And I've been asked to write college textbook, but it's even crazier and more harsh. But yeah, taking those steps, if you break it down and chunk it, then you can become an author. For me, taking those writings and now condensing them into an actual work, like one work. Just start with one work and then make it to the next work.
Well, the book's called A Simple Guide to Writing and Publishing, but to keep that in mind, a simple guide to writing is what we're talking about right now, but then the publishing end of it can be the most daunting part and probably the most confusing part, because you're thinking about, can I write this? How do I write this? How do I motivate? How do I find my passion? But then when you get past that and you've written it, now what? What do I do now?
Correct.
You have to make decisions. Do I try to get a traditional publisher? Do I try to get an agent? Do I get a manager? Do I do this on my own? And you have to figure out, and for both of you, you're both in business. So for me, that's a no-lose. Obviously, you want it to get the book in your hands yourself. You want to control those books, because you can take these as seminars that you'll be doing, or coaching sessions or whatever it is you're going to be doing, and that is who you are. That book is going to represent what you're talking about. So that's a business strategy, really, for you.
I think the other thing, too, with your course is you don't know what you don't know. When you're entering something new, you think you have an idea of how you're going to pursue it. But there's lots of aspects of, especially on publishing, that I didn't even know about till I learned it yesterday. So I think that's the other benefit of taking a course, because you are going to be exposed to things you didn't know. And on top of that, we discussed this yesterday, there's a plethora of information on Google, and you're going to get 10 different ways to do something. And that may have worked for that person, and that's great, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you.
It can actually confuse you.
It does confuse you. And I know that's what happened to me. I became extremely overwhelmed. So by learning the process that has worked for you, why reinvent the wheel? Why confuse yourself? Use something that works. So
and Tara, thank you for that, because here's the thing. Oftentimes, we talked about this yesterday as well. You'll have this plan in front of you on how to do this book. It's a simple plan. My advice is go out there and do it the easy way first. Now, there are a lot of ways to go about this. So then explore beyond that. If you want to add to this or get a new experience with it or find another way that you feel benefits you better, fine, but you have to do it first. There's always that first step that you take. It's like school. Obviously, you go to grade school, junior high, and then high school, and then college. You don't just jump right into college. It doesn't work that way. You have to take the steps necessary to get there. And oftentimes people want to skip. They want to skip school. They want to skip classes and go to the next level.
Immediate gratification.
Yeah. And it can really confuse you when you do that. And not only that, you can spend so much money and waste so much time and effort that if you had just done it the simple way first, and then as you gain knowledge, improve. And truly, that's what it's about.
And not overcomplicating things.
And don't overcomplicate, yes.
Well, and also, too, your guide and your course break down the barrier to entry, because most times you think that you need a literary agent, you have to get with the big publishers, HarperCollins, Penguin, all those guys. And by doing the either self-publishing or going through your publishing company, you really want to say fast track it a little bit without all the noise that goes and all the rejection that goes along with it. I think that's one of the things that often scared me about becoming an author or getting a book deal, because big companies, there's like advances, there's tours, there are all these things that go along with it. But if you just do your work and get that done, then you can start marketing yourself. There's the other marketing strategies that you brought up in that course, which had we not taken the course, we would not have known these other options that you can have in either self-publishing or going with a smaller publishing company. And that's what I appreciated, because we live in a time where people are at the do-it-yourself level. You have a book inside of you and you have an idea, then do the work independently. Don't look for the big deal. Do it for the passion. I think we even talked about that with the podcast. Do your book, do your podcast, whatever the case may be. Do it because you're passionate about something. Don't do it about the money. You know, it isn't about the money. It's like, do you have a message to put out there? Do you have some knowledge to share? And if you have that knowledge, write it down. Get it out there. It'll come.
And we did talk about, too, the first book. The first one you write may not be the most perfect one, obviously, but it's like anything we do in life. The first lecture you did or the first seminar you ever gave, I'm sure it wasn't its best. But as we go along, the first podcast you did, Sherry, I mean, I thought it was good. But, you know, the thing is that sometimes they're not what your expectations of it were. But that's okay because you did it. And now you have the courage to continue and do the next one. So don't even think about that, like, oh, how are they going to receive this? I wouldn't dwell on that at all. We want it to be good, and you are working for perfection, but we had a friend, your friend, at dinner the other night who was talking about, what is the quote he gave about perfection? Do you remember?
Oh, it kills progression.
Yes.
Perfectionism kills progress.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why you don't want to focus on being completely perfect. Every author that I know, including myself, when that first book comes out, you constantly are taking it back to an editor. I went through 6 editors on my first novel, and it still was not where I wanted it in the end. But you have to reach a point to where it's time to put it out there. Let the world decide. And there's always going to be a critic. I don't care how good it is. There's always going to be a critic. So you're never going to please everyone anyway. So just put it out there, and then that gives you the motivation and the courage to continue on with the next one and the next one. And
well, that's how you build confidence. Yeah. You have to continue to do things to make things happen. So you just have to put the work out there.
And that's why we do seminars, and that's why we do events. It's okay to do that. We did talk about the expense of that. Sometimes we'll go to an event. I've been to many book events where you'll pay $200 for a table or $250 for a table and to present your work, and then you may only sell a few books, and you don't even make enough money to cover that. So when you're doing something like that, are you going to the event to just sell your book, or are you going there to network and learn? If you're going to take a course somewhere, how much would you pay for that course? So if you're going to an event and you're looking at it from that vantage point, like, well, what will I learn from this? It's okay. But if you are relatively experienced in this, you may not want to go ahead and spend $200 on the next one, realizing you're not going to sell that many books. Look for something that's a little cheaper, like $75 table. Or is this an event where there's going to be several thousand people where I have a chance of selling a fair number of books? So, and also, and for both of you, you're in business. So yours is a little bit different in some ways, because with you, you're trying to get the book out there and gain recognition for who you are. So just getting it into a few people's hands is a benefit for you, because you're also going to have podcasts. So then they have a place to come back and listen to you, and they may buy into your business plans in the future or whatever it is you're doing.
Correct.
So there's a lot of ways and a lot of reasons why we write. There's a lot of different reasons why we do podcasts. But we're talking about the events and the seminars and the benefits they have for you. You've been to several, Tara. You shared that.
Beyond several. I continually go to different types of events in the personal development space. I even take time off of my job to go to these events. And most of the time I'm going, I'm always learning something new. I'm always up-leveling myself. I don't think you ever get to a final destination. You continually just grow and become better and expect more from yourself. And I think that's what's vital about any course, seminar, whatever you're taking, even if it's nothing to do with your passion. If you're learning something new, you're becoming better, more valuable to yourself.
I actually see you as like a sponge, because when we went to dinner the night, we were walking around after dinner and we're all talking, and every time someone would mention something, you would actually get out your phone. So let me write that down. What is that name? What was the name of that book? What was the name of that? And that's great. If you have spare time, why not?
Oh, I read a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I'll read 6 books at one time.
Wow.
Sherry knows. She's seen me.
And I'm actually the recipient of the ones that she's done with. But I just wanted to jump back to a point where when Tara was mentioning being a sponge and always sort of like the self-improvement thing, the same goes with businesses. You know, when I do business plans, where you want to be in year 1 of your business, year 2 of your business, and scaling up. And nobody is an island, and you don't just arrive at a business or a brand on day 1. You have to work your way up. You have to know your business, know your customers, and scale up to becoming a brand. The more you're recognized, then you're more on your way to being a brand.
What you're getting getting at is basically when it comes to writing, you're creating your image yourself.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And I know for sure as an author, you are out there to sell yourself to the public as much as the book. I always talk about with people, and we did at the seminar yesterday, how you're not really on the radio, meaning as a guest on a radio show or on a television show or whatever, or a talk show. You're there to present yourself. And it's that image you project that get people interested in the book you wrote or whatever it is you're doing. So you're kind of selling yourself first.
Absolutely.
And then you're selling the work. And that's really important to understand that. That's part of what we talked about in the seminar yesterday. So that's why events and seminars are necessary, is learning all these steps. It's not as simple as just writing the book and putting it out there. It certainly is as simple as writing the book, sending a query letter off, and finding a traditional publisher. More than likely, that will not happen.
Right.
Right. And being that sponge, you're building up not just knowledge, but your credit worthiness, so to speak, your trust level and authenticity, because now you're taking all that information and it's becoming part of who you are, part of your psyche and your methodology and things like that.
And to piggyback on that, when you are writing, you do need to be authentic, because if you're just writing just to become a famous author, no one's going to buy into that message because it's going to come across.
Well, at least not always.
Right.
I know one person who calculated his career in writing.
Oh, okay.
I've had him on my show. His name's Philip Strange. He's from Australia, and he was a detective, a retired, I believe he was a red. No, he wasn't a detective. I've forgotten now what he did. His friend was a detective. I know two writers, and they're both friends. And so anyway, when he set out, he researched what are the best-selling books out there. And it was romance and true crime or crime and drama. And so he thought, okay, I'm going to write detective stories. And he has made a career out of it. He did set out to write detective stories without ever having thought about one or anything else, because of the fact that it has the largest market value. So he's an exception.
True.
But I'm sure a lot of authors who are out there now, though, whether it be Stephen King or Grisham or whomever, they stay within their genre because that's kind of what the traditional publisher expects of them anyway.
Right.
But also it's because they know they have something that's going to sell and people are going to want to read again and again and again. So they've actually created a revenue stream from that. But in general, you should be writing from your passion. What makes you passionate? And that can be many different things when it comes to writing.
And I think you're absolutely correct, because James, you mentioned earlier that I have 6 books that I'm writing because my original passion is fashion. That's where my bachelor's is, but my master's is in, the MBA is in marketing and all that. So I have 4 books that I'm writing that are on the business and marketing side, but then I have 2 books that are going to be on the fashion side, maybe even 3. And obviously a movie idea, but
Right, and a lot of the authors I know write all over the place. I write children's stories, science fiction, drama, government espionage. So I don't limit myself. It's whatever is in my mind and I feel is creative, that's what I'm going to do. And because I'm not out there trying to see how much money I can make. I probably should be, but I'm not. I'm doing it because I truly, truly enjoy what I do. It's a passion for me. And so I just let that go. I want to bring up something that you brought up to me yesterday. I'm going to let you speak about it, Tara.
Okay.
I always learn something new every time I do a show, and I really do. And I'm constantly learning something new in this industry because there's always something new coming along.
Right.
And so you shared with me something called Net Gallery Shelf. Can you explain that?
I was fortunate to be in 2 book launch groups before they launched it publicly. And the authors put their books on NetGalley, which it's a digital format where you can read. It's not the final published copy, but you can read the entire book digitally. And it's not the most user-friendly. However, it's a great tool because you get to see the advanced copy and get to read the entire book. You have to be invited to it, but it's a great app.
Yeah. And because we were talking about, you asked the question yesterday, should I put out advanced copies? Can I do pre-sales? And we did talk about how important that is actually. And we talked about fundraising and how important that is as well. And you have to create an event out of that as well.
Correct.
So that's a great little thing. I'm glad you shared that with me.
Yes.
And, you know, I'll be sharing that with
good.
listeners going forward.
Absolutely.
Because we're always looking for new angles. You know,
Definitely.
You have to.
Oh, yes.
And that's why I don't want people to think that when I talked about my seminar, my book, that's the only way to do it. It certainly is not. But I think you need to follow those steps to get there first.
Yes.
And then as you learn things, add to it.
Oh, sure.
You know,
Agreed.
so, yeah.
Absolutely.
Sherry, you have any questions?
let's see. I don't know that I have any questions at the moment.
What about you, Tara?
No, I'm good. I just think the course, again, was extremely helpful to me, and it helped me get more focused and more excited about the idea that I am going to be able to write a book.
So what's going to be your next event or seminar?
Well, I'm in the process of writing my book called Bite-Sized Growth, which will also be a podcast. So I'm in the process of creating that, and I'm very excited about it. I can't wait.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that you are going to have other events you'll be going to before that's finished, and that's great.
Yeah, I do.
I highly recommend that you do attend some kind of a book event just to to get a flavor for what it's about.
Okay.
And you can actually go to those even if you are not an author, just as an attendee, just to see. And that way, when you have your book come out, you can see how they set up their displays and how they present themselves and what they do.
Oh, great
and
advice.
I really recommend that.
Oh, thank you. I will absolutely do that.
All right. Well, we're running out of time, and I'd like to thank both Tara and Sherry for being on my show today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And as I always say, if you can dream it, you can write it. Thank you for being on the show. And one more time, you can find our podcast at allaspectsradio.com. Sherry?
And you can find me also on allaspectsradionetwork.com at Business to Brand. So you can also find me at Sherry West, MBA on LinkedIn and rhymeandreasonmarketing.com.
And Tara?
I'm on LinkedIn as well. It's Tara Virnick. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, but soon you'll be on our network list.
I absolutely will be.
All right.
Very shortly.
So again, that's
So
allaspectsradionetwork.com, or you can also go to aspectsofwriting.com. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you,
James.
Have a
You're
great
welcome.
day.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Aspects of Writing. We hope you will join us next week as we discuss every aspect of the writing industry. Until then, if you can dream it, you can write it.